Did you know Scotty once dodged bullets on D-Day and later spoke at NASA? I know, that sounds wild. I'm Sarah Reed, your pop culture historian, and welcome to Golden American Legends. Today, I'm tracing James Montgomery Doohan, born March 3, 1920, in Vancouver, a Canadian actor, a real WWII veteran, and the man who made the words chief engineer feel like a cape. He later joked about his landing at Juno Beach. "We were more afraid of drowning than we were of the Germans." That one line tells you a lot about the man: blunt, brave, and a little cheeky. I spent days combing old interviews, war histories, and NASA archives for this story. The surprises stack up fast. A teenager strong in math and science, a D-Day officer, then the coolest fixer in TV space, and finally a friend to real engineers. It reads like a movie script, but it's all true. What do a WWII soldier and a starship engineer have in common? In Doohan's case, everything: grit, invention, and humor. What's your first reaction to learning Scotty was a war hero? Comment below, because I want to hear it. Now let's rewind to where his inventive streak began. Long before transporters and warp cores, there was a kid who grew up around actual science. Here's a quiet clue you might not expect. Scotty's spark started at home. James Doohan grew up with science in the air. His father was a pharmacist and an inventor. There's even a long circulating story that he developed a high-octane fuel in 1923. Whether that rumor is perfect fact or family lore, the vibe was real. Jimmy grew up comfortable with tools, ideas, and creative problem-solving. When the family moved to Ontario, he enrolled at the technical school in Sarnia. He showed real talent in math and science. I picture him as the kid who takes apart a radio just to learn how it sings and then puts it back better. Those classes weren't just grades. They were early training in how to think like an engineer, break the problem down, test, adjust, try again. You can feel that in the Scotty we all love: the warmth, the practicality, the try it, then improve it rhythm. But before any of us met him in engineering reds, the world called him into a very different uniform. The next chapter isn't a soundstage. It's a stormy beach in France and a young officer steering through chaos. Let's land at Juno Beach. Picture this: June 6, 1944. Cold water, heavy surf, machine gun fire raking the sand. Before he ever touched the Enterprise, James Doohan wore a different set of stripes. He enlisted in 1938 in the Royal Canadian Artillery and rose to lieutenant in the 22nd Field Battery of the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division. That division took on a critical role in the D-Day landings at Juno Beach. I went back through Canadian wartime accounts to get a feel for the moment. The landing craft slammed toward shore. The ramps dropped. Men sprinted through water that could swallow you whole. Doohan would later say the terrifying part wasn't just the bullets, it was the ocean itself. Think about the stakes. One wrong step and the story ends there. But he made it through that morning, through noise, smoke, and fear, and kept doing his job. That resilience is the seed of the cool head we see later in Star Trek. When pressure spikes, you steady your hands. He survived Juno. The question is, how close did it get, and what did he carry with him after? The answer is raw, and it leaves a mark you can actually see, if you know where to look. "We were more afraid of drowning than we were of the Germans." That's James Doohan talking about D-Day, and it hits hard. The man behind Scotty faced death from every direction: water, fire, shrapnel. On Juno Beach, he was wounded. The blast cost him 2 knuckles of his right middle finger. It's one of those facts that hides in plain sight, but once you know, you can't unsee it. The 3rd Canadian Division took heavy casualties on that day. Doohan wasn't a superhero. He was a human who kept moving, doing his duty while the world fractured around him. That wry line about drowning isn't dark humor for show. It's the way survivors sometimes hold the memory without letting it crush them. Honest, unflinching, and somehow kind. I think that survival taught him a simple code: assess the problem, act fast, and if you live through it, bring a little light to the room. That's the energy we'll later feel at his TV work: steady hands and a grin that says, "We can fix this." But those wounds didn't just fade away. They came home with him, and he guarded them carefully. Let me show you how he hid them on set. Here's a set secret many fans missed. Doohan's right middle finger was partly gone from his D-Day wound, and the team often hid it with clever camera angles and makeup. Watch closely and you'll spot the rare shot where the hand flashes dye. Most of the time, the illusion holds. That choice wasn't vanity, it was professionalism. He wanted you to see the engineer, not the injury. Over the years, he even spun playful tales about it. One joke claimed his father shot the finger to kill lice. Colorful, sure, but the truth is grimmer and braver. Normandy shrapnel. For me, that contrast says everything. On screen, Scotty's hands dance over controls, steady and quick. Off screen, those hands carried scars from a very real war. That's why his humor feels different. It isn't empty snark. It's warmth born from surviving something you don't forget. He understood how to keep a crew calm because he learned calm the hard way. With those hidden wounds, he stepped into a new life after the war. So how does a battle-tested artillery officer transform into the most beloved engineer in TV space? Let's roll into the soundstage. How do you go from foxholes to sound stages? With grit and curiosity. After World War II, James Doohan turned to acting. He worked in radio and theater, building a toolkit that mixed timing, voice, and character work. You can almost see the bridge between his two worlds: precise cues, teamwork, and quick adjustments under pressure. That's military training, and it's also really good stagecraft. By 1966, he stepped into a small TV show with a big dream: Star Trek. For 3 seasons, 1966 to 1969, he played Lieutenant Commander Montgomery Scott, the chief engineer of the Starship Enterprise. He wasn't just pressing buttons, he was the ship's beating heart, the steady hand when alarms screamed. I checked old casting notes and interviews from that era, and you can hear how much thought he put into the role. He wanted Scotty to feel competent, kind, and quick. He knew that engineers are the heroes you call when everything is going sideways. But there was one more choice that made Scotty unforgettable, and it happened the moment he opened his mouth. Why did a Canadian sound like he just walked out of Aberdeen? Let's talk accents. Here's the twist. The most famous Scotsman on the Enterprise was Canadian. Doohan tried out voices and picked a thick Scottish burr for one simple reason: it felt right for a chief engineer. A memorable voice makes a character stick, and the moment Scotty speaks, you know who he is: warm, direct, no nonsense. He didn't stop at sound. Doohan sprinkled in dry humor and a tinkerer's creativity. On set, he was quick with little touches that made the engineer feel real. Small jokes, tiny smiles, a look that says, "I've got an idea." The accent gives Scotty color, but the choices underneath give him heart. That's why fans don't just laugh at his lines, they trust him. I love that he built this persona from parts of himself: discipline from service, curiosity from childhood, and a voice that brings it all together. It's character engineering, really. Craft, test, refine, and when pressure rises, let the warmth come through. But a voice is only the start. What truly made Scotty a legend were his miracle worker moments, those split-second saves that kept the Enterprise flying. Let's power up the warp core. When the ship was in trouble, who did the captain call? Scotty. Over and over, he pulled off daring fixes with style. Think about classics like The Trouble with Tribbles or The Doomsday Machine. The details change, but the pattern sings. Systems failing, time ticking, and the chief engineer squeezing one more watt, one more second, one more shot at hope. And then there's the sound of it. "I'm giving her all she's got, Captain." That line is an anthem. It captures the guts of engineering. Push, measure, adjust, and push again. Doohan fused tension with humor so well that you felt safe even when the lights flashed red. He made problem-solving feel heroic and human. I rewatched a stack of episodes to feel the rhythm again. Scotty is the crew's backbone, the guy who faces the unknown and still smiles. That made him more than a TV character. He became a model for how to lead under stress. Before we meet the real engineers who embraced him, let's clear up one of the biggest lines in pop culture. You've heard it a million times, but here's the truth behind the words you think you know. Okay, truth time. Nobody in the original Star Trek ever said the exact words, "Beam me up, Scotty." I know, it's almost shocking because the phrase is everywhere. What we hear in the show are variations, but not those exact words. The myth stuck because it fits what Scotty represents: the person who gets you out of the impossible with skill and speed. There's another bit of lore that swirls around Doohan: the missing finger, sometimes turned into wild backstories. Over the years, he joked about its origin, but the real cause is D-Day, Normandy, shrapnel. The reality is tougher, and to me, it's more inspiring than any tall tale. Why does this matter? Because the true story of Scotty and Doohan is already extraordinary. No exaggeration needed. When you center the facts, you see something clearer. A performer who built a character so strong that fans and engineers still quote him, even when the quote's a remix. And that brings us to the best part, the way real space people welcomed him as one of their own. Let's step into NASA and watch fiction and flight shake hands. Why did NASA roll out the red carpet for a TV engineer? Because engineers saw themselves in Scotty's grit. The relationship goes way back. In April 1967, Doohan visited the Dryden Flight Research Center, now Armstrong, to meet test pilots. In 1980, he narrated a documentary about the Space Shuttle Columbia just before its first flight in 1981. By March 1992, he delivered a standing room-only talk at Goddard called Engineer of the Future. That's a TV legend speaking to the people who actually put ships into the sky. I dug through NASA write-ups and archives for those dates, and the through line is clear. They respected the craft he portrayed. They knew the attitude. They lived it. If you're new to Golden American Legends and you love when pop culture meets real history, hit subscribe and tap like. We do deep dives like this all the time. So the agencies loved him, the engineers loved him, but what about the astronauts who rode the fire? Did they feel that same kinship? The answer walked in on 2 legs and a moon patch. Let's meet the spacefarers who saluted Scotty as a peer. When a moonwalker salutes you, you did something right. In January 1991, shuttle astronaut Mario Runco, nicknamed Spock, which is perfect, hosted James Doohan at NASA's Johnson Space Center. Doohan climbed into the shuttle trainers and toured mission control. It wasn't a photo op, it was a welcome. Then came a moment that still gives me chills. In 2004, at Doohan's retirement, Neil Armstrong, yes, the first human to walk on the moon, stepped up and honored him as one old engineer to another. That line lands because Armstrong understood what Doohan had built, a public face for the calm, clever, can-do engineer. These weren't fans waving from a distance, they were peers showing respect. Astronauts and flight teams saw in Scotty the exact spirit they want on their crew. When things go wrong, you want the person who keeps talking you through the fix. So, we've seen NASA open the door and astronauts tip the hat. But the influence doesn't end in space centers. Fans took that inspiration and changed something very real on Earth, or rather, in low Earth orbit. Let's roll out a very special spacecraft. Did Trekkies actually change a NASA vehicle's name? They did! In 1976, NASA planned to call its first space shuttle orbiter Constitution. Fans launched a letter-writing campaign to the White House asking for a different name, Enterprise, after the starship. President Gerald Ford agreed. When the orbiter rolled out at Rockwell's Palmdale plant on September 17, 1976, the original show's 10th anniversary, it wore the name Enterprise. I love this moment because it proves how culture and science talk to each other. A TV show planted a seed, and real hardware carried it forward. The shuttle didn't fly in space, but it became the test bed for the fleet, and it carried a name that told everyone what the future felt like: bold, curious, and shared. That is the Scotty effect, too. Make the fix, make it work, make people believe, and then watch them step up. We've seen the institutions respond. Now let's travel to where the story matters most, the people who chose a career because a TV engineer showed them how heroism looks in a machine room. Here's my favorite part, the human chain reaction. Over the years, countless scientists and engineers have said Star Trek nudged them toward the lab, the test stand, or the mission console. One published account even puts it this way: his exploits inspired many to become an engineer, and one individual even followed him to the moon. It's a bold line, but the heart of it rings true. Talk to folks who design satellites, code guidance software, or test rocket valves. Many will tell you they grew up with Scotty's voice in their head. Stay calm, solve it, keep the crew safe. That's a powerful role model, not the flashy hero with a phaser, but the teammate who keeps you alive. When I scan NASA talks, museum exhibits, and industry panels, Scotty pops up again and again as a shorthand for good engineering culture. He's the archetype of the can-do problem solver with a warm smile, and his real-life story gives that archetype weight. So what does all of this add up to? A legacy that lives far beyond a TV set. Let's wrap this journey with what James Doohan still teaches us today. From Juno Beach to the bridge of the Enterprise, James Doohan carried one message: fix it, protect your crew, and don't lose your humor. He showed us that technical skill and kindness can live in the same person. The war gave him steel, acting gave him voice. Together, they built Scotty, the engineer who made problems smaller and people braver. His influence didn't end when the cameras cut. He passed away on July 20, 2005, and that same year he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Today, teachers, museums, and STEAM programs still point to Scotty as a role model. And in my mind, I still hear Neil Armstrong's salute, one old engineer to another, echoing across a room full of fans and flight suits. If this story moved you, please subscribe, like, and share. I've got more histories where pop culture meets real life, and I'd love to dig into them with you. Thanks for watching. Which part of Doohan's journey inspires you the most? And how do you see engineers following in his footsteps today? Let's talk in the comments and keep the spirit of smart, kind engineering alive.